What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Scott DeLong with the CEO Podcast. I'm here again with Vince Moiso, my partner, and we have a special guest, Rebecca Scolari.
Hello.
Rebecca works for Portfolio, which happens to be one of my clients. And the reason that I brought her into this podcast, she's a director, high-level executive at Portfolio. But the reason I wanted to get her is that last summer we did a analysis from the company had asked for me to facilitate a working group, a large working group. There were 13, 14 people in that group, which is a little bit difficult. But to work between your three offices and figure out how are we going to navigate this new world, the work from home, come back to the office, work from anywhere, hybrid, and how that's going to go. And we actually had a pretty detailed process that we went through. There were 4 focus groups, one in each office plus one remote focus group. Again, with these 13, 14 committee members, and we would meet weekly for most of the 4 months we were working.
4 months, yeah.
And going back and forth and working on that. And then there was actually a survey that went out to the rest of the employees, those that weren't in the focus groups, got their voice heard. So first, what I want to hear about is, how did that come up? I mean, who created the committee and why? Whose idea was that?
Well, I think the executive management team and the board of directors wanted associates to know that they were taking the kind of new normal very seriously. And I think they also wanted to put some strategy behind it from an HR perspective and a management perspective, versus everything up until that point had been very reactionary to the pandemic, right? Yeah. So, when the lockdowns happened, it was like, send everybody home with whatever equipment you could find and make it work. And that's how we all kind of survived for a year and a half. And then I think as, lockdowns started stopping, and, mass mandates started lifting, they said, okay, now we need to put something more long-term, more focused, more strategic in nature together and show our associates that we see them, we hear them, and we want to put something in place that makes them feel more stable and comfortable.
Yeah, well, what were you hearing? Were you hearing from, just out of curiosity, is I'm guessing that employees got a taste of working from home, some of them at least, and said, oh, wait a minute, we like this.
Absolutely.
And we want to stay this way.
Yeah, I can do my job just fine. I have been for over a year. Why do I need to come back in?
Yeah.
And then we were also getting feedback, though, from some employees as well. Like, I miss people. I miss the collaboration. I miss the energy.
Be back in the office.
Yeah.
And at different levels. So there were some lower level people that missed having that community. And in fact, I think some young people as well, because when you're not as visible, management can't see what you're doing, just evaluating your work instead of who you are, and potentially less promotable when you're not visible.
Absolutely. I mean, you think of personal brand versus monitoring KPIs. There's a huge gap there, when you look at someone's productivity based on data versus their general presence and what they bring to the table. So,
well, they don't bring, so I would tell you, if I've learned anything, and I've had my own experience on all of this, and I would say, because you bring up a really great point, is those that are fully remote are now pigeonholed into only what they do. And
absolutely.
Because you aren't seen for more than what your responsibility is and what you're delivering or performing based on your role. That's it.
Well, yes and no. You don't have to be. In fact, there's an employee at your company, remote, and has been remote, and makes her presence known too, and does a great job of making sure she doesn't get lost in that context.
Well, and so that's a great point. Yeah, it's not all. I shouldn't have put that in the category.
But you have to be cognizant of it.
You have to be cognizant of it, and I would tell you that really anybody who's in remote, so like for our listeners right now, is that anybody who's working remote, you have to understand now, you are you're not seen. You're no longer seen at this point, and so you're oftentimes forgotten in the mix. And therefore, it's really up to you to be noticed. Like
right.
you're the one that has to reach out almost
if you want to be
time.
noticed.
Right.
You almost have to 2x your communication.
Yeah, more effort.
Yeah, the effort has to come from you. So like you can't all of a sudden, I mean, you shouldn't sit on your heels ever in any position you are, whether you're physically in the office or not in the office, and expect that powers that be are going to just notice you and promote you, and that's going to happen. You got to make it happen, even more so if you're remote.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing that I found in working with your companies, I also saw some of the older people wanted to be in the office because this became part of their social life as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you think about it, it's been decades and decades of being programmed to what a professional work environment looks like. Yeah. And all of a sudden, one day, that whole perspective was gone.
Yeah.
So... And, I would say younger generations, they're more adaptable, especially when it comes to technology and utilizing technology and feeling more pressure.
I can go to that young person in the cubicle over there to help me out, is what you're saying?
Well, no, I think is like, because you're talking about, let's just talk about, say it what it is, it's Zoom or Teams or Google Chat, whatever it is that you're using, right? And that virtual setting initially was somewhat of a novelty, right? Like it was exciting because great, you're working from home, you're isolated, but at the same time, now I can feel a little bit of connection because I can see you.
Yeah.
We can talk to each other. There's a way to video chat. This
got
is great
cool
technology.
Tools.
I got all this cool stuff. And then that novelty, in my opinion, wore off pretty quickly. And the shift became, great, how do I now leverage this as a real tool to be effective within the business, effective both internally and externally? And I think those that have figured that out, those companies are doing very well right now. Those that are still struggling. So I was on I had a coaching call early this morning. Scott, you'll appreciate this one. And the client, it was a 30-minute call, which is the initial one, like a little bit of a discovery, right? The client was 15, maybe almost 18 minutes late.
Ooh.
Because they had never used Zoom before.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this was a Zoom. Wow.
Okay.
So
usually when I have difficulties with Zoom, it takes me a good minute or two.
But normal, right?
Right.
Technological would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever.
Was this an executive person?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But my bad, because that's on me. I should have foreseen that there could have been. I made a very poor assumption that everybody's done, video calls before on any platform, because you no longer need the app. You can just go straight online and just do it from the website. That being said, that's still my fault. Because
that's an interesting point, though, because I myself don't think to ask someone, hey, have you ever done this before?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
No, I should have. So I take ownership of that. I don't want to push that out on the person at all.
Well, good for you for taking ownership of that. However, if you've never used technology before and you have an appointment with Vince or Rebecca or me, practice before you get there, because
let us know.
Our attitudes will be a little better when
you know what, though?
You're not 18 minutes late.
I treat it as a little bit of a learning experience in the sense that we do take a little for granted that in the last 2 years that everybody's been on virtual calls before. And I think there are still a large group of people that have not. And even more so, I think there's a large group of people out there that aren't necessarily, and I don't care about the age, because I know young people that aren't technologically savvy and just don't know how to navigate through all of that. And so I think we take it for granted in our fast world, especially those of us that are using it on a regular basis, and we just punch through it, right? And the other person is struggling, and we don't know.
All right, so I'm going to go back. I want to come back to focus on you a little bit, because you kind of fall in that in-between category. You're not brand new out of school, although you recently got your MBA. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're one of the high potential people at your organization, so that you're seen as someone that's coming up and looking for that next level as well, eventually executive position and then C-suite. And I mean, that's the trajectory they have for someone like you. What's your feeling on the work from home work for you personally? I know you've got a couple of children, 2, right?
3.
3.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you definitely want to work in the office. Oh, no.
After a few months of lockdown, I was like, get me out of here.
That depends on how old they are, right?
Yeah, I suppose. So what's your personal view on, for you, for the ideal job for you, what would you do? You're managing people. You want to be seen because you want to take those next steps. You're highly productive. All your work's getting done. So all the check marks, they're there. I'm going to say, if I'm your boss, you get to decide what you want to do. What's your decision and why?
So for just me personally,
Just you personally.
not from a management member.
Yeah,
Okay.
just from you.
For me, I like hybrid. My current schedule is I go into the office most days in the morning for a few hours.
Okay.
I'll have lunch at the office, and then about an hour or two after lunch, I'll go home and work from home the rest of the evening.
So what are you doing during that time in the office that you would different than if you were at home? Why are you in the office? What possesses you to go to the office then for that 4 or 5 hours?
I think it's a couple things. I think number one, I love the energy from being around people.
Yeah.
I'm an extrovert. I don't like sitting at home alone in my office for hours and hours on end. It's not my favorite. So I love being around people. I love being around my people. I always tell my staff that I'm not a manager, I'm an advocate. And so I really like to feel the energy from my people and understand what their workday looks like and what they're going through and just touch base with them. So I think that's one aspect.
Good.
The other one is that I feel more focused and productive when I'm in my office. I like to take meetings in my office and close the door, but I'm still in an office setting, you know. The dirty dishes aren't staring at me, the laundry's not staring at me, the gardener's not in the backyard. So there's something calming and peaceful about my office. And so I like to schedule meetings then and work on projects, you know, when I've got a detailed spreadsheet to work on or a presentation to develop. I like to be in my office. It's just a certain feeling about it.
So
Yeah.
what does the hybrid model do for you then? So then at home, talk about then you're splitting time working from home. What does that do for you?
I think just feeling the flexibility, you know, I'm able to make appointments and that kind of thing. And then I can log back in and make the hour up in the evening. I like working in the evenings. So also I get to spend time around my children. So even though they're busy with activities and sports in the afternoons, just that flexibility of being able to log off for an hour or two here and there and then still log back on later and get my work done.
So I liked it when you talked about the dirty dishes. That reminds me of a story. When I sold my second company, I thought I was going to retire at that point. And I'm sitting on the couch watching television one morning, and the dryer buzzer went off. And my wife asked me to fold towels. The next day I went and got an office. That was my motivation. Nope, I don't want to be home to fold towels. So sorry, I'm going to the office.
I have a huge dog, and he doesn't realize he's huge, and he's like my shadow. And so when I work from home, he literally puts his huge, massive head on my lap at all times. So that's another factor, is the dog.
So comforting, not distracting.
The dog?
Yeah, the dog.
Distracting.
He's distracting.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What about at home? Like, is working from home distracting, or do you feel like? Because I heard you say, you know, you can get things done, like run errands or appointments, whatever, right? But then come back and make that hour up. And, so, do you have that focus time at home, or do you feel like it's distracting at home and the office is the sanctuary?
I feel like the office is the sanctuary most of the time. Later at night, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night is when I kind of feel that peace and I can, you know, put my head down and really get to work.
So let's talk about your role as a manager then, or as an advocate. Not a manager, you're an advocate, not a manager. So what have you had to change in the way that you're dealing with the people that work for you?
Well, I think a big thing is I've learned a lot about the individuality of my teams. There are people that need to be more hands-on managed. There are people that aren't. There are people that need more frequent check-ins. There are people that need advice more often than others. So I've really had to adapt to how to manage different types of individuals and different teams in different locations. And I think before the pandemic and before, remote work, I kind of managed everyone almost the same. And most of the time there was a generally positive feedback and relationship.
Yeah.
But now it's really forced me to dive in and learn about everybody and how they need to be managed, especially remotely. And because I have offices in different states, it's forced me to learn even more about them as well.
Yeah.
So then as the company just got behind this strategy, I know you were speaking from yourself and how you feel about it. So I'm going to guess, though, the company has adopted, you have adopted that. And then is that something that you've also empowered your employees to take on? So they've got a choice. They have the flexibility of working from the office, working from home, or hybrid. And then has the company itself then embraced that as a policy?
Yeah, it has for the most part. As Scott mentioned, we had this huge committee and we did all these, activities and research to kind of come to a recommendation for our executive team. And we put on a presentation and gave our summarized recommendation. And what we came up with was a 4-tiered system, a category system, where an individual could either fall into 100% work from home, 100% remote, or under 50% in the office, or over 50% in the office.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give the varying degrees and based on, job responsibilities and tasks and title and position.
Qualifications.
And qualifications.
Yeah.
And that's where we landed. But the most important piece of our recommendation was the importance of managerial discretion. So understanding that mid-level managers, department managers, and supervisors know their teams best, know who would qualify for what, and it really should be up to them. And you can get department heads and executives to sign off, but to really engage with each individual and determine what's best for the individual and what's best for the organization and what's best for their team. So
did you end up with, because I want to see if I understand it, so if you're giving discretionary decision making via management, now do you have different departments that are doing different things?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm going to say a little bit about this, and this had all to do with the committee and nothing to do with me. The presentation that they made to the executive team was ready. They were ready to bite, and they knew what they thought they wanted and what they thought would be best. And this presentation was so strong and so thorough, they didn't have any questions.
Wow.
They all just looked around the room like, who's going to challenge that? Like, it was that thorough. And a lot of it was you.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of it was you. I mean, the team did a great job. There were other individuals that I could call out that did a great job as well.
Absolutely.
But this 4-tiered system, if I recall, was brought to the table by you.
Yes.
Was it not?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think it was also in an effort to not pigeonhole any one person or department into anything black and white. Like, it's either remote or in office. It gave managers that flexibility, but was still structured enough that, okay, we can put on, the job title or the position that this falls in A, B, C, or D.
Yeah, we found, just sharing from my own direct experience, one I'll share for a second. I'm in the camp of the hybrid model personally, just me personally. I feel the opposite that you do, in a sense that the office is not my sanctuary. The office feels more like chaos than my home does. So oftentimes I get incredible focus time, and then I have a separate office where I have even better focus time, and then my main office oftentimes feels like chaos. But a lot of that is my own fault. I'm an incredibly calendared person, so I'm very structured in how my day goes. And when you're in the office, you have to understand exactly as you described
People
it.
walk through the door.
People walk through the
Drive-bys.
door. They want to talk to you. You
Yep.
get all the drive-bys.
Yep.
All of a sudden, something happens where you're now a part of a group discussion that wasn't even on the calendar, and a decision has to be
Yeah.
made and stuff like that. So when I say chaos, that's chaos for me, but that's because I've built this kind of very structured life, and so that I understand in my role as an executive for the business that it's a necessity for me to be there, and those things are important.
Yeah.
And so I accept that.
So I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to say, as the leader of your organization, it is the highest value that you can provide to your company to be available for those that work for you
Absolutely.
in that chaos.
I agree with that.
Right?
And I would argue that I thrive in chaos. So it really excites me.
I got a book called that right behind you, Thriving on Chaos.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. You can read
Yeah,
that.
I don't like to be stagnant in any facet in life, and so I love that. I love the drive-bys,
Well, I only share that with you because in the same way, I have to live in that hybrid model in order for me to be as productive as I
Right.
want to be. So regardless of whether my sanctuary is the home and your sanctuary is the office, it's irrelevant, because the hybrid model is what creates that balance per se that gets you at a high level of productivity. And I can tell you, not everybody that works for me or with me feels the same. And so we early on in a similar fashion found that flexibility was going to be incredibly important for us to survive through this. We had several employees that moved out of state.
Yep.
Immediately once we opened the door for that, they said, "Hey, we're going to take advantage of being somewhere else. It's going to be a little bit less expensive."
We've had a lot of that.
And we found that those people are incredibly productive. And then I've got this mix of what we were talking about earlier. I've got these mix of people that are remote that make themselves very known, even though they're remote. And I've got people that now have just completely pigeonholed themselves in the role that they're in. And I think they're happy doing that, which is fine.
And they could be.
And
Yeah.
if that is the case, great. It works. I mean, so I think everybody is functioning at a high level. Like our team is functioning, in my opinion, at the highest level that I have ever seen since I've been a part of the business. So it's interesting that we were already we were moving toward this remote model before COVID hit. Ironically.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
we were preparing.
Yeah.
We were preparing for it because we recognized our businesses goes across the country and international, and we recognized that it was better to potentially have individuals in certain regions geographically, things like that. And so we had already had this plan put in place of like, how could we start to shift the company organizationally. So it was really strange as COVID hit, it just accelerated it.
Right.
But we had some preparation already. So it's interesting to me when I hear you are like almost after the fact.
We were a fire drill.
You were a fire drill and you're reacting to it, but yet still landing in a similar place.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting what happened to their company. Overnight, they had to make a change, and their business didn't drop off either. In fact, it accelerated at the same time.
Absolutely.
So it was a really difficult time for the company and the employees or associates, depending on which group you come from, and that they handled it well. Like everyone handled it well.
Oh, the level of adaptability was really, really impressive.
That's cool.
We really felt more like a family and a community, I think, afterwards, because we were so supportive of one another.
This was happening at a time where they were just getting through a merger. Two companies coming together.
Literally, like the month after.
Like
wow.
right at the same time where all the dysfunction could happen.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
you've got a shift in the organizational chart. You've got people being
And maybe
managed
it was
by
a
new
blessing.
people.
Who knows?
Yeah.
COVID might have been a blessing in that when you look at that.
You know,
didn't have time to think about the two different.
The drama. Yeah.
Drama. That's a good
Yeah.
word for it. So, what have you seen with the morale of the company and as a whole, and individuals in general? Are happier? Is it a happier place to work than? I mean, it's always been a good spot.
Yes.
But have you noticed any difference in morale with this flexibility?
I think it's higher,
Oh,
to be
great.
honest with you.
Great.
Yeah.
I do too. I mean, I've experienced the same thing. I think it is a morale shift in a big way. Well, because it's a form of empowerment. Yeah. I mean, really, we've talked about this. We've talked about, how critical empowerment is as part of a culture. We've talked about power, and we've talked about empowerment within that concept. That being said, you're saying to your employee, I trust you to make a good decision on what's going to be best for you. So if that is working from home full time, if it's a hybrid model, whatever that is, I'm going to give you the flexibility to make that decision. That's extreme empowerment. I mean, really.
And we've had situations where we had to kind of go back to the drawing board and bring some people back.
I was going to ask about that.
Or they initially preferred to come back, and then they said, hey, you know what? I want to try hybrid. I want to try at home. Yeah. And so it's really increased engagement with each of your team members, I think.
Are the managers happy too? It's more work for the managers.
It is.
To do this in this fashion. Are the managers happy too?
I would say so. I can speak for myself that I am.
Great.
Again, I feel more engaged with each individual, oddly enough, even those across the country. I mean, when we have management meetings and project management meetings, integration meetings, it seems like everybody's just got this positive outlook, and it's like, let's get to work, let's work together. I just feel like the collaboration is higher. Especially across departments. I feel like there's not as much siloing as there used to be.
That's great. How about managing up then with your bosses, right? So the people that you report to, have they embraced it, captured the spirit, happier too, learning how to manage people differently?
Absolutely. I feel very, very grateful that they have been. I know for my boss, like you mentioned, just empowers me to just do what's right for you. Yeah. I trust you to build your own schedule.
And your boss is I want to come to the office every day kind of person too,
yes,
right?
Yes, she is.
So,
and she does.
Yeah.
She leads by example. She comes into the office every single day. I think she works from home maybe once every other week due to a doctor's appointment or something right before she's about to travel. But the bias, I think, the walls have come down for the C-suite level.
Frankly, I was worried about that, not just for your company, but for anyone that's managed by 60-year-olds, right? Mm-hmm. Which we grew up in a certain way, and this is the way life is. This is a big change, and even dealing with the millennial groups, right? It's just a different than what we're used to, and we are those that are the ones that have to adapt even more.
Right.
Because that's just not going to be our way.
But I've noticed, like we mentioned my boss, but I've noticed some of the other C-suite level have embraced, they themselves are remote or hybrid.
Yeah.
So, it's all across the board at every level.
And the company's still growing, company's still productive. Life is good from the board of directors' point of view.
Yes.
The board's happy too.
Yes. Yep.
Well, we've had a couple podcasts where we've talked about, market conditions, especially the labor market, very, very specifically. And we've talked about the challenge of the labor market and this mass exit, and now all of a sudden this mind shift of really taking a long time to make choices around who I've talked about this before, is take Portland, for example. Portland, Oregon has got more jobs available than there are people to fill those roles, right? So you talk about a challenging marketplace, and then now you've got people that are in the market, the talent, right, that are already working, and some of which have this expectation of, I don't even want to consider the job unless there's a remote opportunity.
Oh, yeah, the requirements are completely shifted. Yeah, almost, and the entitlement too.
Yeah, it's exactly.
I mean, let's call it what it is. Yeah.
It is. There's an entitlement to it at this point. Interestingly enough, so like if you want to talk, so having employees in multiple states and being a California corporation, let's understand is that every time I put an employee in another state, I have to register my business within that state and pay that state's taxes. What gets missed, and the employee doesn't understand, is that they now the rules for the employee
governed by that state's laws
are governed by that state, and so they also think typically wages are based off of the living wages or expenses by where the person lives. And so what has been a misnomer, I mean, we have not changed anybody's compensation. We made that decision immediately that, hey, great, that's fine. Their compensation is going to stay the same even though they move to Texas or Arizona or whatever. Living expenses are going to be less, but we're not going to change their wages. However, they didn't even ask. There was this sense of entitlement initially until we got out ahead of it and really created this policy. But it was funny because people don't, and I want the listeners to hear this. Yeah. People don't understand that you're actually governed by the state you move to at that point, both as an employee and both as your wages. And so the expectation of, I was once living in California getting California wages, and now I moved to Arizona, you should be, technically the employer is in a position to give you Arizona wages, not California wages. And so you have to be careful with that and having those conversations. So now I know better to set expectations better. So I own that part of it. We didn't get totally out in front of it. I wish we would have even on that type of stuff. But now I know better to set those expectations. I'm going back to that word entitlement though, is there is a lot of misconception around what all of this means.
I'll give you one of the answers that I got in a focus group when someone said, well, but now I don't have to spend the gas to go to work and it's costing me less to live. And I said, well, in order to keep that, would you be willing to give money back? Oh, no.
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That entitlement
I'm saving, but yet.
Yes, right.
But I don't want to give
I don't
it
have
back.
to be on the freeway anymore. I don't have to spend the gas money anymore. But my salary is my salary. Right? And
I'm still working for it.
That was interesting to me.
It's an interesting mentality.
And then it came back further. Well, what if you had to come in the office for a special meeting? Then I would expect mileage. Honestly, that was the response that I got.
I remember that.
Oh my gosh,
I remember that vividly.
That was hard to keep my facilitator face on.
Is like no, and not only that, as I've heard, I expect expense reimbursement. Yeah. I expect
home office reimbursement.
Home office reimbursement.
Travel time.
Yeah, all of a sudden I was getting reimbursement for or a request for reimbursement for, oh hey, I bought a printer for the house. I didn't ask, like I didn't come and say, hey, I made the request, here's a requisition, is it okay if I do this, blah, 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 blah. It was just all of a sudden, the Expensify report came over and there was a printer, there was paper, there was all this other whoa, what's going on here?
Right.
No. So wait, you're saving money and now as a company, we're on the hook for buying all this equipment. It's just, I guess my point is that as a company, again, we made the decision that in certain cases, we will reimburse for those type of things. However, when we agree that somebody's going to work remotely or permanently remotely, here's the recommendation that I have. Have those conversations ahead of time.
In advance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, ask for them, don't expect them.
Yes. And that's what we do. So my staff will say, hey, I need, an adapter at home.
Yeah.
And then we'll see if we have it within our inventory or if we're about to put an order out, we'll include it in it. And if for whatever reason it's emergent and we don't have it, I'll say, okay, go ahead, get it, and I'll approve
reasonable.
it.
That's
reasonable. Yes.
So it's easy to say that this is more expensive for the organization and more difficult for the managers. And that's all true. It is. It is both of those. And at the same time, what we, management, need to think about is that productivity is probably slightly higher than it was before, covering some of those costs, and turnover is probably lower than it would have been without these adjustments as well. Yeah. Another cost that we're saving. So net equal, I would say, in my mind, on the extra things that it's going to cost me. Someone's got to fly in that they didn't have to before. Yeah, we need to eat those. We just need to eat those costs.
Reality is when you do a cost analysis on it, which we've done. I mean, it's net pretty slim, right? It's not It's not big. You're right in everything that you're saying, but I think culture is so important. We talk about this all the time.
I was gonna say the impact on culture and how people feel about work.
That's the opportunity.
Yes.
Yes. It is, and I think that impact, like the value you get from that, is far greater. And at the same time, how big we are on communication, and that is carried into my organization. So again, I go back to, great, you can get, I think, if you want to be remote, you're already remote, and you want these extra things, just ask. Like, don't expect, don't be entitled, but work with your employer, work with the owner, your manager on getting those things. And I think if you're reasonable about all these things, you're likely to get them, because we're not the only two organizations that have made these type of shifts, and we're not, there's going to be more, because it's not over yet, and I think companies are continuously adapting and shifting to what employees want, what new talent wants, and what you do for one, you have to offer for all, really. So you can't isolate and say, I'm just going to allow Scott to work remote, but I'm not going to give that opportunity to anybody else.
Unless there's conditions. And in fact, you laid those out, and then with the whole management discretion. And there are reasons that somebody has to be in the office. Somebody in the shipping department probably cannot work from home.
Right.
No. Right. There's just...
And there's also introductory training periods where, it's more beneficial to shadow someone physically, and be there present with them. And so we have periods before you're even eligible.
Yeah.
So
let's take a step back on culture, because this is where I've been proven wrong. And I'm glad I have been. My concern with this work from home, work from anywhere, remote work, even hybrid, was that culture was going to take a hit because we weren't on the same room. We weren't having lunch together. We weren't doing the drive-bys and doing all of that. And come to find out, I think cultures have improved in most of the companies that have allowed for this, because you got happier employees now.
Well, culture's created, culture's driven, when you have champions of the culture of the business, I would argue it doesn't matter. They're going to be the ones to drive that culture, regardless if you're remote or in the office or some sort of hybrid model. Even me personally, as a leader in the business, as much as I'm in the office or out of the office, I've shifted. Even I'm more productive personally, because the ability to leverage the virtual call with so many people throughout the day, I have more meetings in a shorter amount of time and accomplish way more, and I'm way more connected to everybody. I had, during COVID, I had tenured people with the business say they've never been more connected with the business. That's crazy.
That's great.
We heard that too.
And reality is when the culture's there and you're still driving the culture, it doesn't require you to be in a place, so to speak.
Yeah. So we're getting towards the end of this now. We've probably going long even. But the reason I wanted you here is because you have been a success story, proven me wrong in a couple of these spots where I had these ideas of what would happen.
How'd that feel? I just want to know.
To tell me I'm wrong. Yeah. And in fact, glad I'm wrong, because what's good for the organization, right? If it's good for the people, it's going to be good for the organization generally, as long as there's some guidelines and some structure placed around it. And I wanted to hear from somebody younger than us as well. Is it making you happier personally? Can you handle
younger than you anyway?
She's younger than you too.
Just saying.
Don't
pull me into that.
All right. We get that a lot. I get that a lot. I get the old man in the room. We've had one guest older than me so far. I'm going to start looking for a few more.
Age is only a number.
There you go. Age is only a number.
You.
Yeah.
With age comes wisdom.
Thank you.
Or something like that.
This is true.
Okay. So anyway, I wanted to have you here to hear the story and how, first of all, I'll give a lot of credit to your company for allowing that committee to even be formed.
Absolutely.
And that idea to get out and get people's thoughts, because who was it? Lee Harris was telling us about an organization, I think it was Goldman's, that said everyone's going to be back in the office on Monday. 50% of their 10,000 employees, 50% did not show up.
I heard similar stories at other organizations. Yeah.
No, I know people. I know a lot of the more traditional industry banks, for example, and I know several people. I have close friends in the banking industry, and I know a lot of them jumped ship. Their organization had started the requirement for them to be back in the office and weren't going to give them any flexibility whatsoever, and they were gone. They found the bank or the financial institution that was going to allow that flexibility, and they were gone within weeks. Yeah. And so the amount of attrition that those organizations are feeling, I think that's a lesson. I mean, it's good that you bring that up, because I do think it's a lesson for any of our listeners to understand that in my opinion, the market has shifted. the market has spoken.
And
this
it's
is where
permanent.
we're at.
It's permanent.
It is.
We're not reverting back to the way
No.
it used to be
No.
ever again.
No.
We have to accept this ever-changing kind of environment, flexible, adaptable
I
environment as our new forever.
Completely agree.
So do you have any advice for directors, other directors, people that are having to manage staffs and work your way up the ladder? And what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that you would give advice to somebody in a position like yours?
Well, I would say that it's a natural result of listening to your own people. Your success is a natural result of having a good relationship and open communication with the people that you lead.
Yeah.
I think it happens naturally, and people higher above on the ladder than you will see that, and it will be based on how successful and productive your teams are. So I would say number 1, listen to your people. I would also say number 2, collaborate cross-departmentally and listen to other departments and other teams. Focus on your team, make that the priority, be open and honest with them, engage with them, but also know what everybody else is doing, because they could be doing it better.
Sure.
Or they could be doing it worse, and you could help them out.
Yeah.
So I'd say those are the 2 most important things. I would also say listen to those higher up than you. Obviously, we always want to do that, and we want to learn from them. But I think the engagement and the knowledge, it kind of starts from the bottom and goes up.
I was going to say, but you
point.
can also educate those folks, and I think your group really did.
Yeah,
Did a
so
great job
I've
doing
really noticed that for me, the number 1 recommendation would be just start from the bottom line level every day, open communication with your people, and kind of go up from there.
Scott, what was your big takeaway from the discussion today?
Mine is that this new system works. This new hybrid or finding out what it is that people want works.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a top-down driven society anymore. Listening to the people that what their needs are and taking care of them. It goes back into the conversation we had about equity versus equality, right? Giving people what they need, not equal across the board necessarily.
No, that's equity.
Yeah. So the piece of equity is there. So what I was really glad to see with Portfolio in particular, but generally with other companies that have gone through the same thing, is that it works.
Yeah.
And we have nothing to worry about.
And it's not 100% perfect. Like, some people aren't going to work out.
Yeah.
Some people are going to have to come back into the office. But you just keep your eyes open and your ears open, and you just go with the flow.
Great.
No doubt.
All right. How about you? What did you come up with?
Yeah, you know what? To me, in listening to your story and about your company and how you were able to exact change, I think there are still a lot of organizations and a lot of companies out there that need to adapt and haven't adapted. And I was reminded it takes a champion to do that. And it doesn't happen without, sounds like you were that champion, and it doesn't happen without that, unfortunately. You used the word collaborate, departmentally collaborate. That's incredibly important, right? So one single department or one single manager may not be able to get that done on their own. So collaboration is really important, and it takes a champion to see it through and exact that change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This wasn't an easy decision for the company, and it took 4 months to get through the process, even with the committee, to get to the right recommendation and support it. So if you think that you're just going to make a snap decision like Chase did, or whatever the bank in New York said, everyone's coming back on Monday, and think that's going to work out, think again.
Yeah.
Yep. Takes a lot of due diligence, for sure.
Rebecca, thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you
thanks
for having
being
me.
on.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
So until next time.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Right. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.